Hey everybody, Mac here. Welcome back to the show. And I have something to show you that I am really excited about. If you watched my unboxing video, you probably knew this was coming. This is Neca Toys Dungeons and Dragons Warduke. I cannot tell you how excited I am to have this figure. And you know me, I'm normally not real excited about Neca figures. Like, I have the Flash Gordon figures, and that's really about it. But Warduke here, this one, I had the original. I think I still do. I think it's at my dad's place. I need to find it again. The original, like, 3 3/4 figure of this character from the 80s when D&D was first bringing out their line. And to get this in a modern interpretation, and for as good as it looks, I mean, the packaging is just fantastic. This image absolutely looks like something that could have come off of like the Player's Handbook or the DM's Guide or the Fiend Folio or something from like that late 70s, early 80s first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons source books. Evil action figures up here in the corner. We have our classic D&D logo down here. Warduke Ultimate Action figure. On the back, we have some really good promo shots of him. We also have a cross-sell for Grimsword here, who I am not as attached to or familiar with Grimsword as I am with Warduke, but I do have this guy, and we'll be taking a look at him. Just more on the side, a great shot of Warduke, D&D Warduke here, and then another great photo of our guy right here, Warduke Ultimate Action figure. Neca branding up top, not too much on the bottom, but then we also have the packaging here that we can open this up and you can see the figure inside. Once again, some really great, let's try and get the glare out of there, a really great promo shot right here. Look at how good that looks. Look at how good that looks. And then of course we have the figure right here. And let me just say, this is a little bit off subject, but let me just say that the windowless packaging that Hasbro is doing now with their Marvel Legends and I think G.I. Joe and pretty much all of their figures, I don't have a problem with windowless packaging. Like, if it just came like this, I wouldn't have a problem with this because I do most of my ordering online anyway. However, something like that Dr. Aphra that just came out with Black Series, where it opens up and there's just a photo in here, I get why collectors are upset about that, but oh, that looks so cool. But like, if it was windowless, I wouldn't have a problem with it, but I understand why collectors get upset about that. Look at how deep this box is. I can't wait to take a look at this guy. You can see all of his accessories, all of the trade components. Look how good he looks. Look how good he looks. No more ado. Let's just get him out of the box, and let's take a look at Neca Toys Dungeons and Dragons Warduke. Alright friends, here he is, Warduke out of the packaging. And can we just take a moment to appreciate how reflective he is? Look at the light shining off of that cobalt steel helmet, off of the scale mail of his arm and his leg, even the gun metaling, the worn metaling of his bracer and his spiked anklet down here, and the gold on his belt. Even his red gem right here. Everything. This guy looks so good. And then we put the tape measure to him, and we see that he is approximately 7.5 inches to the top of his helmet here, but about 8.5 inches to the top of the bat wings of his helmet. So I don't know what I can say about the sculpt, about the look of this guy that hasn't already been said. I know I'm late getting him. I know I'm late getting this video out because I was sitting on it waiting from Big Bad Toy Store in a pile of loot. But look at how well done this whole thing is, between just the standard skin tones, the flesh sculpt over here versus the armored side over here, the scale mailing on his leg down to the spiked bracer down here, and the spikes are a little bit flexible. They're still not completely plastic or not completely rubber, so they'll hold their mold, they'll hold their position, but I don't think they would snap as easily as they would if they were completely solid. And even like the difference between the boots here. how he has like one armored boot and one pirate boot with the red gems on the cuff. And even look at the cuff. There's texturing on the cuff, and you can feel that. It's very rough versus the smooth of the bottom of the boot. This whole figure was sculpted miraculously, even down to the sheaths for his weapons. Look at the detail work done on here. Look at the detail work done on the scabbard of his main weapon. You can see the wooding, the wood paneling, like the wood paint over here, that this is like a wooden sheath right here. And then the blue gold matching his scale mail right here. And then we take a look at this like worn steel gauntlet on his hand. And he has, if he had an open hand and one of his hands is open, you would be able to see the brown leathering on the inside. And look at all these straps. They're not all lined up. They're all intermittent. They're all like off-centered. That looks fantastic. The necklace isn't molded to the figure, but I think it is glued down so that it doesn't move, so that it will hold position. And then even the body sculpting underneath here. Now, we'll get to this when we talk about articulation, but you can see there's kind of like an ab joint in there. But as you can imagine, with everything he's wearing right here, doesn't really get much movement out of it. And then this big old pirate belt, this big old barbarian belt right here, with this horned skull thing going on. The bronzing of it, the whole thing looks fantastic. And in the original figure, it was just blacked out in the visor, and then you saw the two red eyes coming through. But actually, when I think about the original figure, I don't even know if he had the red eyes or if it was just completely black. But it looks like they tried to make it appear that it was like not just blacked out. Oh, look at that. I love that. Just completely black. I think that's how the original figure was. This was just completely black with no red pupils. But they tried to make it look like, I think, that it's like part of the actual sculpt of the helmet on the inside. The paint apps are virtually flawless on here. It doesn't look like I have any overspray. It doesn't look like I have any missed marks. I'm not entirely sure. There's a lot to take in. There's a lot to take a look at. Even the gold buckling on this belt pouch back here. But I don't believe I have any overspray or any paint sop. Maybe just a little. No, not even that. I think that was just light. Everything looks fantastic. The bat ears are a little brittle, that I feel like if anything is going to break, it's going to be these things. But I think Neca was kind of in like a situation where, do you make them rubber so that they don't hold position, or do you make them stiffer, maybe a little bit more brittle, but then they hold position, they keep that form, that shape. Just look at this guy. Look at this guy. This guy is fantastic. And he's much bigger than I thought he was going to be. I thought he was going to be sort of like how Flash Gordon and Ming are a little bit closer to the 6-inch side than the 7-inch side. I wasn't expecting him to be as big as he is, but I'm really glad he is. So let's get to the articulation. And this is where I usually have a lot of issues with Neca. That, first of all, the head will do a full 360. You can see I'm being very delicate with it because of those ears, the bat wings. He doesn't have a lot of head tilt, but he can get some head tilt. He can look up fairly well. It's not as good as some figures, but that's actually better. That's better than what I was expecting with this big helmet. And he can really look down. He can really bury the chin in there. Okay. The arms, this arm, the scale mail arm is a little stiff. And it only comes up to about there. The Baron arm comes up much higher. The scale mail arm would do a full 360, but obviously this gets in the way right here. Okay. Now, this one can do a full 360 as well. The scabbard on the back gets a little bit in the way, but it can at least move. This is also molded in. It's not pegged, but it is molded so that it pretty much stays over his shoulder, and there's a lot of strap work going on here to try and keep this into position. You saw it can come down off of his shoulder. I don't recommend doing that too much. It might start to get loose. I try and keep it up on the shoulder as much as possible. Look at the armband right there. Now, they have bicep swivel, single jointed elbows, but also hinge and swivel at the elbow. Wrists will spin, and this is my only true complaint with the articulation. To be completely honest, and you know I've been hard on Neca's articulation before, so this is truly my only complaint of the articulation with this figure. The wrists pivot in and out. They don't go up and down, which I think is the only real fail of this figure, because he's holding a sword. You want him to be able to, like, angle the sword out. You don't want him to be able to, like, you don't really care about him being able to curl in like that. Now, this hand over here, I can kind of understand why they did that, because this is the shield holding hand. He can hold the shield in, or he can curl the shield in. I can deal with it on this hand. With this hand, the hand that's going to hold the sword, I think that was a big mistake. Now, like I said, he does have that ab cut in there, so he can get a little bit of torso twist. Okay, the straps, all of his gear, his kit right here, really hinders his articulation. You can see that that's coming down off of his shoulder. Doesn't really crank back that far. Doesn't really come forward that far. I think he might have a waist twist as well, but this big belt seems to be blocking it. And once again, trying to keep the straps up on his shoulder. And I just noticed that, like, there's even some weathering on the shoulder of the strap, at the high point of the strap. Like, that's not stress. That's not like stress with the plastic breaking. That's actually how it's supposed to look. That's so cool. That is so cool. Oh, I love this figure. His legs will come forward. His fur loincloth kind of hinders it a little bit. But coming back, they go back very well. Has not a thigh cut, but he has a hip joint in there that swivels his leg out. This is what McFarlane is trying to do with their figures, and it doesn't work nearly as well as this. Both of them, both legs, can swivel out and swivel in very well. You can see both legs are limited by the loincloth right there. Even though it is split, still can't get the leg fully up to 90. Can get it fairly well out to the side, but let's be honest, this is Warduke. He's not going to be doing any high kicks. Single jointed knees that stop just at 90. The knee is a hinge and swivel as well. But then he has a boot cut right there that they hid at the top of the metal of the bracer, but he also has a boot cut on his pirate boot over here. Ankles rock back. Ankles rock forward. And then you have a forward-facing pin for some rocker. So, like I said, Neca usually being the one aspect is like the articulation, like really fighting the articulation, really worrying that this is going to break. I didn't heat this figure up at all. I didn't have to do anything to him. He came out like this, and that makes this thing even better. Like, I think that was a big win with the articulation. Granted, I don't have a lot of Neca figures. You know this, and that is the main reason why. Every Neca figure I've ever gotten has had really stiff, almost breaking articulation. The fact that he came out ready to go, really like that. So here we go with the standard hands that Warduke has. Both of them are gripping hands, and even with the gripping hands, you can see there's some really nice detail work with the fingernails, and even like the muscle work and the veins on the back of the hand. So he has his sword gripping hand, and he has a gripping hand over here for some of his other accessories. We're going to do something a little different, where usually I know I put the other hands on the figure, but we're not going to do that today because this is the other hand. This is an open hand for the gauntlet, and I don't really know what he's supposed to hold with this because there weren't any accessories that fit inside that hand. But it also gives you a much better look at the inside of the gauntlet. How you can see, like, there's that leather gauntlet with the metal fingerings, and you can see the plate work moving a little bit more. I like that. But then he also has this gripping hand, which anybody who has this figure and can tell me the difference, because I really don't think there's any difference between these two hands. They look like the same grip hand. And the only thing I can think is that Neca gave us two of the same hands because of this big boy right here, which is his huge horned skull shield. This is his symbol. This is his icon. This is fantastic. I love the deep sunken eyes. I love the texturing of the skull. And if you look on the back here, you even have like a faux piece of leather and then the armored bar so that the leather will go over the arm and then the bar is what he holds on to. And putting the shield on Warduke, it's just easier to clip his hand around the handle, pop a hand off, slide it through, pop his hand in so that he's holding it. And I can't help but wonder if we got two gripping hands because you're just supposed to leave one on the shield. Because you do kind of have to bend the fingers a little and the thumb to get it around the bar of the shield. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave this hand on the shield so that when I take this hand off, I can just pop the whole thing on. If anybody knows why there are two hands that are exactly the same, please feel free to tell me. But as far as I'm concerned, that's why we have that. And then the other hand we have is his commanding finger pointer hand, finger pointing hand. Then once again, you have some detail work with the fingernail, but past that, it's just going to be a, to the front, men type thing. All right, real quick, let's show you how to do the shield. At least, like I said, the reason why I think we have two gripping hands here. The hands actually come off very easily, which is another plus, because the Neca figures I have, the hands never come off that easily, especially on the first go. But then you just slip the arm through that little leather bit right there. Whoops, come on. And just work it down on there, and there you go. He's holding the shield. He looks good holding the shield. He can get some really, really good looks with this thing, especially with the hand, how it sort of tilts in like that. I really like that. I do think I'm just going to leave that hand on the shield bar and just say that's his shield holding hand. Love the design of the shield. Love how it looks so much like the original, but has also been updated at the same time. And it looks fantastic. So we're going to leave him in shot while we take a look at some of his accessories, and I'll show you why in a moment. First of all, we have this really cool dagger. We have a really cool dagger. I love the shading, the wash that's on the blade that gives it some detail, that gives it some depth and some dimension. Looks like it's been put to a whetstone a few times. Really like the design, how it sort of has like this Bowie or Saracen look to it. But then I also really, really like the handle. I really like the handle, how it has that little, I don't know if it's supposed to look like a bird skull or if that's just me, but I really like the design of the handle, and I really like how it continues to match the blue, the blue of all of his armor. And this is what this sheath is over here for. It's a little bit of a tight fit the first time you get it in there, but it pops in there so well once you get it in. Fits so good. Basically, we're arming him up, and I love that he can hold all of his weapons. We have a short sword right here that is very reminiscent of like a Roman gladius. And once again, we have some weathering, some wash to it, some detailing. Gives it some dimension, gives it some depth. Really like the handle. Again, Neca went all out with the design of this figure, and I absolutely am here for it. This looks fantastic. And then this goes on the sheath that's hanging off of his hip. And I didn't even mention that is a real chain that's holding it on right there. That is a real gold chain holding it on to his belt right there. And I really like that. I also like how his weaponry, these pieces anyway, even the one that's over here, and even though the sword isn't painted, the scabbard continues to carry his coloring motif right here. And I like how this just hangs off. It can hang forward, can hang to the side, can hang a little bit back. Really, really like that design. And then, of course, we have his final weapon, his big blade. And just like with the other ones, you get a little bit of a wash, gives it some detail, gives it some texturing, gives it some dimension. A very simple hilt. And I say simple, when you look at the way a lot of other hilts are designed, they're kind of almost over-designed. Like, you believe this weapon, this hilt could come from an age where this guy came from. And that would probably still be very, very ornate to them. I like how you have like this little claw with the pommel right there, with the gem setting in there. You can see that the brown is starting to rub already off of the handle, and that is because the gauntleted hand that holds this is very tight. And I'll show you in a minute, but there's one more thing that I want to show you, and that is the flame effect right here. And I think this flame effect looks great with the different coloring, quasi-translucent, the different coloring of the flames. You have some yellow, you have some orange, you have some red. And that fits right over the blade. I don't know if you can hear that. When I first put it on, I was so worried that I was going to break it because it is very tight. It's getting looser every time you put it on. But the first time I put it on, oh, I was so gentle. I was so worried I was breaking the blade. I was so worried I was going to snap it. But now, like, it goes off and on. I don't want to say easy, but much easier than when I first put it on. You can see there's a little bit of a bend to it. That's more from packaging than anything else. Blade is a bit flexible, so it doesn't snap, but I also feel it's strong enough that it's going to hold its shape. So let's get the flame back on. Well, first of all, let's do this. That it fits beautifully in this scabbard on back. Look at that. With the gem on the scabbard, the gem on the hilt. You can see it coming up over his shoulder. There he is, all geared up, all kitted out, ready to go. I think I love this. You know I love, like with the G.I. Joe figures, how they can pretty much carry all their gear on them. The only thing he doesn't have is like maybe if he had a hook or something back here so that he could also sling the shield. I don't know. I don't know if there's a way to do that, but this looks great. And the sword kind of, it doesn't snap in there, but it definitely like pops into position so that when it's in the scabbard, it's in the scabbard. So let's take that out. And let's take a look at his hand right here. You can see there is a very tight grip, and this has a rounded pommel. And I work it very gently in there because I'm trying not to, there we go. I'm trying not to loosen the grip, and I'm trying not to lose any paint app on the hilt of the sword. But he looks great holding it. This is a great representation of the sword from the 80s 3 3/4 figure. I gotta find it and I gotta compare it. I gotta stand it up next to this guy. And then we take our flame effect. And you put that on. And I like how the flame effect is a little off center. Like you can see it's running along, definitely running along one side. So that whenever you would get him, let's turn that around. So that whenever you would get him in swinging poses, it looks like the flame is like favoring the side that he would be swinging. That looks so cool. That looks so cool. I love this guy. This might be my favorite of the year, and it's only February. And now for size comparisons, we're going to be teaming him up with a lot of fantasy element figures with this, as you probably guessed. So here he is next to the Masterverse, New Eternia, Viking He-Man, and Barbarian Skeletor. Here he is with McFarlane Toys, Witcher 3, Geralt of Rivia, and Ciri. Here he is with more McFarlane Toys, DC Multiverse, Azrael, and Etrigan the Demon. Here he is beside Lanyard Toys, City Hunter Predator, and Xenomorph Drone. Two more McFarlane Toys figures to take a look at. Here we have him next to Eridan Briok Glass from The Witcher 3. And from Mortal Kombat 11, we have Spawn. So here he is from really the only other two NECA figures that I have. Ming the Merciless, and he kind of represents pretty much the Defenders of the Earth and the other repaints that they've done with Flash Gordon, because he's very representative of the size of that line. But then we also have Ultimate Pinhead over here. And finally, here he is next to Hasbro, Dungeons & Dragons, Driz Duerdin, and me from the Valaverse Action Force Steel Brigade. And I just want to take a moment on this comparison right here. That first of all, do you remember when Driz came out? Do you remember that when we got him in our hands and we had such high hopes for Hasbro and the D&D line? Yeah, me too. Now, this size, I don't know how I feel about this size comparison, because the elves of Faerun, the elves of the Forgotten Realms, are supposed to be shorter than humans. So, but I don't think it's supposed to be that short, because even looking at like a standard 6-inch scale figure over here with the Steel Brigade figure, he towers over these guys. Now, he is also taller than the standard, than like a 7-inch figure. Let me show you once again with Geralt here, that like Geralt and Drizzt are kind of at the height that I feel like normal humans and elves of Faerun are supposed to be. But there's something else I want to show you. Let's take Steel Brigade out. And you know how big Serpentor was. Those of you who have Serpentor know how big that figure was. He's even bigger than Serpentor. I can't wait to see how big Grimsword is compared to everybody else. So I meant what I said before. Even though this is the first one I'm opening up, technically I think this is like the first real new figure I'm opening up of 2023. I'm just going to say it now. This might be my favorite figure of the year so far. There's so much coolness going on with this figure, and it's not even nostalgia. Like, if I didn't have the original 3 3/4 Warduke figure, I would still love this figure because of the connection to Dungeons & Dragons. Dungeons & Dragons, maybe that's where the nostalgia is coming from, but Dungeons & Dragons has been a huge part of my life ever since I was a kid. And to see this figure this well done, this is the best representation of Dungeons & Dragons in plastic form, in action figure form, that I have ever seen. It puts to shame the figures that Hasbro has coming out. And I can't wait to open up Grimsword. I can't wait to get Strongheart. I can't wait to get the other one that is coming out, whose name I can't remember, but he's a goblin thief. And I really hope there are more coming out, and Hasbro, you really need to give Neca a shot at doing the animated figures, at doing the cartoon figures. I would love to see the animated figures matched up with this guy right here, because he did show up in the cartoon. He did show up in one episode of the cartoon. And if they can make him look this good, who admittedly could be a complete train wreck of a figure if it was done wrong, with the scale mail on one side, the skin on the other side, the different boots, the helmet, everything. This could have been a train wreck. This could have been so bad and so camp and so just weird looking, but instead it is just awesome. I cannot say that enough. I cannot recommend this enough. If you're into the fantasy genre, if you're into D&D, if you're disappointed by what Hasbro has been pumping out with the movie figures and the cartoon figures, don't be disappointed anymore. Get your hands on this guy. Wait for the rest of the line to come out. Because if this did as well as I think it did, and Grimsword does as well as I think he's going to do, they'll keep going. We know Neca. Neca does the slow burn. They want to see how things work out. At least that's the impression that I get from them. They want to see how things work out, and then they'll just try and, well, for lack of a better term, milk the line, and just keep taking it out year after year after year. And there are so many figures from that old line that they could bring out. Like, there's still Kellic, I think. Kellic the Wizard would be awesome to see from this. The detail, the sculpt, the paint app, the articulation, especially the articulation, being able to swap out those hands so easily. Everything that I was worried about with Neca toys before, especially last year when some of their Ninja Turtles were just falling apart out of the box, this has put all of those worries aside. I cannot recommend this enough. Go out and get one. That's all I can say. You'll thank yourself for buying it in the morning. So that's what we have, friends. I really hope you liked this look at Warduke. I know I did. I can't wait to get Grimsword open. I can't wait to match him up with some of my other fantasy figures. This is going to be a really, really fun time playing around with this guy. The only complaint I have, like I said, the only complaint I have is that I wish the wrists hinged up and down instead of in and out. The torso articulation is very limited, but that's not really a complaint. That's just a note. I mean, it is what it is. He has all of that gear, all of that kit on. Of course, he's going to be limited in the articulation. If he was real life, he probably wouldn't have that much movement in the upper body either, mainly because of that big Horkin belt. That's what we have to take a look at. I really hope you enjoyed this look at Warduke. We have more coming down the line. We'll be taking a look at Grimsword. We have those D&D movie figures to be taking a look at. There's a lot of like fantasy elements coming down, and maybe something that's going to surprise you as well. So until next time, my friends, play well, stay safe, stay healthy, and as always, thank you for watching.